his mother used to talk about how ugly he was. This is one of the stories. This is something that wasn't like a one-time off event.
That's mean.
She did it all the time. Anytime someone would come over, she would talk about how unfortunate it was that her child was so ugly. And whenever someone would say, he just looks like a normal boy, she would look at him super sadly as if they didn't understand.
Content warning. This is by far their worst episode yet. This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Trigger warning for drunkenness, racism and anti-Semitism. Spoiler warning for the Call of Cthulhu. And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. Follow the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Ryan is at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for links to our Facebook group and Discord server. Enjoy our horror gaming content on YouTube. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. Finally, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.
Welcome to episode 33 of the Horror of Babylon, where we are discussing H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
And of course, well, not of course, because not usually, but
more often than not,
a sweet treat. Say hi, F.
How y'all doing? Good to be here.
Now, real quick, before we go on,
if you give me a fucking top 5 list.
No. If you had never seen this word before, how would you have pronounced Cthulhu?
I can answer that by a coworker.
Okay.
Because I showed him the book and he said, "What's a Cthulhu?"
Okay. Cthulhu. Ryan, how would you have pronounced this word?
I don't know, because I've heard this word for years.
As Cthulhu?
Yeah. I guess because of the South Park episode, I've never... But granted, in the song, they call it Cthulhu, Cthulhu.
Now, interestingly enough, they put their work in on that, because that was Lovecraft's preferred pronunciation.
Now, to read this short story, I listened to the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's audiobook, and they pronounced it Cthulhu.
Yeah. So it was like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation.
Okay, and we are going to open up a Coconut Peat Tart Shake IPA. That sounds terrible.
It has tentacles on it, though.
From High Ground Brewing, which is a West Virginia brewing company.
Obi-Wan is a fan of that beer.
We just keep opening up West Virginia IPAs lately.
Where do you keep getting these from?
Food Line.
The face on the other side of this.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
I'm not a coconut fan.
I like it.
That one's yours. You can have that.
No, we all must share. We'll get a 3-way straw.
Coconut, I'm not a fan. Okay.
I'll share it with you. It wasn't obliquely offensive.
Oh. All right, so before we jump into the episode, we did mention on our social media a couple weeks back that we will be attending DualCon, which is a gaming convention, February 2023 in Charleston, West Virginia. The Horror of Babylon podcast has been an invited special guest to this convention. The three of us, plus maybe some other people, will be attending. We will have a booth where you can come and meet the crew, pick up some Horror of Babylon swag, and we will be hosting at least 2 panels. We are currently in the process of determining what those panels will be. I have some cool ideas, but if you're anywhere close to Charleston, if you're in eastern Kentucky, southern Ohio, that part of West Virginia, definitely show up to DualCon in February 2023. It is a charity event to benefit the American Society for Suicide Prevention.
All goes to a good cause.
Yep, so, and we will be there. We would love to meet any listeners who are out there. We're super excited to be invited, and thank you to DualCon. Okay, so let's kick it off with our history in regards to both H.P. Lovecraft and the Call of Cthulhu. And I would be in grievous error to start this off with anyone other than Mr. Daniel here. So Daniel, please kick it off. How did you get into Lovecraft?
Okay, so this is sort of embarrassing, but I'm sure you can both sort of attest to this.
I've seen pictures of you. This won't be that embarrassing.
I've seen you naked.
In college, I was a little bit of a try-hard edgelord, right?
Yes.
I wore a fedora way longer than I should have, and a trench coat. And I was subscribed to a little YouTuber known as The Amazing Atheist.
You made me watch him before.
He did a parody video where God and Cthulhu were roommates. And I was like, what the fuck is Cthulhu? And I looked it up. And I haven't looked back since. Ryan just opened up another beer. Now he's making a face. He is not. Between us girls.
Cherry limeade.
Okay.
I'm listening.
This is High Grounds, a local brewing company in West Virginia. Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh! Well, from
right?
from there, I looked up who HP... Well, I looked up what Cthulhu was. I read a lot of, like, online articles. I saw that he influenced a lot of things I liked, like Stephen King and Silent Hill. And eventually I bought I think it was Books A Million at the time, a compendium of his complete works. And I worked my way through it. And from there, I've read not all, not even close to all, but I've read a lot of his letters. I've read pretty much all of his stories at this point. I'm just a big fan. And I'm a bigger fan of the things that he's influenced, but I do respect the things that he has put on the horror table.
Real quick, where would you rank the Call of Cthulhu among his fiction work?
Like, in terms of, like, objectivity or my personal favorites?
Your personal favorites.
It's probably in the top 3.
Okay, cool. Have your history with the Lovecraft.
Non-traditional, to be easy enough on it. So, the first time I encountered a Cthulhu or Cthulhu-like being... Mm-hmm. Probably nobody other than me is going to remember this. There was a show back in the 90s called Freakazoid.
Yeah.
Freakazoid, chimpanzee.
There's a specific episode where one of his villains, who is previously known as a gentleman who has a pocket watch that turns beavers into gold, finds a way to tweak it and makes it so that he can bring out a book that summons Vorn the Unspeakable, which is essentially an anthropomorphic Cthulhu. In fact, his thing is, when he comes out, he's like, I am Vorn the Unspeakable. He's like, I take the enemies of my allies and smash them into pulp. And then he points at him and goes, and you are? Like, just introduces himself. But it's basically just an anthropomorphic squid.
Okay.
That's my first experience with, like, any Cthulhu-like entity.
I like your introduction better.
And it's a hilarious episode. If you've never watched Freakazoid, check it out. But
Freakazoid's amazing.
But also, in addition, like, that's one of the funnier episodes because it's literally, you find out, like, he can turn people to stone, and the whole point of the episode is to find the Cthulhu being so that the Freakazoid can turn his girlfriend back into, a person. And to be able to do that, they go and find every monster ever, which includes the Wolfman, Dracula, because he clearly hangs out with other monsters. That's the logic of the episode. The whole thing's hysterical. As far as Cthulhu itself, when you all brought me onto that one podcast, it really started to kind of ignite my own looking into horror stuff. And I figured it'd be kind of...
Batman?
Yeah.
The Batman.
So I figured it would be kind of an offense if I started diving into horror stuff and at least not checked out H.P. Lovecraft. Mm-hmm. And Cthulhu was actually the second story that I had read. after the Mountains of Madness.
That was also in like the top 3 recommended that I would tell people to read.
I would tell people to wait and hold off until they read the Mountain of Madness. Mm-hmm. I can tell you why later, because I think that weaves into like themes and stuff. So I'll hold off on that. But Cthulhu was a good story. But the first one was a couple months ago, and then I read it again this week, so pretty recently.
My experience with Lovecraft is really just third-party stuff, like the South Park episode, and just countless other pop culture references. I never sat down and actually read Lovecraft until this week, starting, of course, with what we are covering, the Call of Cthulhu. So I'm just that I'm that weeby baby boy who started anime with My Hero Academia. So take my opinions with a grain of salt tonight. So let's go ahead and...
I could use a grain of salt for this beer.
I can go get you some if you want.
It's fine. I'm going to power through it.
Here's some coffee.
Thank you.
I like the Iron Maiden.
Wait, is that
beer.
actually coffee?
Yes, it's actually coffee.
Okay.
And it's black.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
So jumping into background first on H.P. Lovecraft and then on the book, on the short story Call of Cthulhu. And we're actually going to let Daniel take the lead on background tonight. Go!
Alrighty, so first of all, Lovecraft was a strong anti-religious atheist. If you've read any of his works, this is super obvious because all of his gods are actually aliens. He considered religion not merely to be false, but dangerous to social and political progress. As such, Lovecraft's cosmicism is not religious at all, but rather a version of mechanistic materialism.
That's funny because the cult of Cthulhu kind of operates like a religion in the story.
Yeah, but when it's revealed that it's very much a entity that exists in the physical world, even though itself is not physical as we understand it.
Oh, this beer sucks.
You still ready to drink the high ground shit?
Yeah.
God, dude.
Lovecraft thus embraced a philosophy of cosmic indifferentism.
Now tell me about Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
Okay, so he was born August 20th, 1990. Died.
I don't think that's right.
Oh, that 1890.
Yeah, okay.
1990?
Yeah, it could also be
And he died at
1897.
40?
I am not older than Lovecraft.
I mistyped that. That is a Daniel bad. He died March 15th, 1897. 46 years old. And his cause was intestinal cancer. The more you learn about Lovecraft, the less bad you will feel about his cause of death.
So, and just as a warning out there, if we are a little less filtered than normal, prior to this recording,
How big is our wizard staff?
Daniel and I did a 90-minute gaming stream of Project Cat, which you can watch on YouTube, and then we did a 30-minute pre-show, and we spent about 45 minutes planning a trip that we hope to take. So this evening started at about 9 p.m. and it's now 12:11 a.m.
Yeah, so...
All right, continue.
Okay, so Lovecraft wrote 70 stories.
Holy shit, that's a lot of stories.
Plus, he wrote stories with other writers. One of the big writers he wrote with, Robert E. Howard, the guy who created Conan the Barbarian. They were actually really good friends.
Just like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, actually. His first story was The Alchemist in 1908. The more notable, Dagon, which was like one of the first really big Cthulhu Mythos stories, was written in 1918, 10 years later.
And the more notable Alchemist Brotherhood was released in 2008.
The number one anime of all time.
Second only to the previous installment.
His
just called Full Metal Alchemist.
His last major story was Shadow Out of Time, which was also on the short list of stories I was going to make Ryan read first, which was published in 1936. After his death, some of his friends and correspondents continued his work, such as August Derleth. I've read a lot of his works too. And people have continued to write and use his characters till this day. The Cthulhu Mythos continues to grow outside of Lovecraft's control, and that was actually something he wanted. He wanted people to use his characters in his works and explore them in the same way that he wanted to do it with other people's characters. He would have hated Disney.
Like Carrie.
Like anybody.
I love Disney.
Okay.
I like Disney productions. I don't necessarily care for their
So
That's fair.
behind-the-scenes stuff.
That's fair.
on the mythos itself, the copyright of the mythos came into question after his death. And this was just a little thing I learned from a YouTube video. This was in part due to him leaving everything to his wife. And his wife thought they had been divorced for several years. He had just never actually signed the papers, even after telling her he signed the papers. It eventually went to his
Could you imagine what a slap in the face that would be?
She was actually married to another guy at the time, making her marriage illegal.
Oh, God.
And she learned it after H.P. Lovecraft died. I have a lot of trivia on his wife, including her being super Jewish and him being super anti-Semitic.
Did you know the HP does not stand for Harry Potter Lovecraft?
Oh.
Did you also know that HP does not stand for Hewlett Packard Lovecraft? So there will be no print runs off of this particular one.
So it ended up going to his aunt, who passed it to her children, and they leased it to Arkham House, who held the copyright for a while. Now, most of his works are currently in the public domain, including the character Cthulhu. If you want to write a Cthulhu story, you can.
Did you know that HP does not stand for Hung Penis Lovecraft?
His wife described their sex life as perfectly adequate.
But it does stand. But it does stand.
That was in one of the letters I've read.
Did you know that since it was perfectly accurate, it can be interpreted that HP stands for heavy penetration?
Hot.
I have a theory later, but we'll get to that.
Oh, good.
Goody.
Where was I at? Cthulhu itself is currently in the public domain. What the problem is, trademarks are not. So, like, the Call of Cthulhu itself, that title is still trademarked because of the RPG game. And several characters and situations are trademarked. So you can use characters, but you can't use exact titles.
Can you use the word Cthulhu?
You can use Cthulhu.
Then who cares?
Yeah. South Park used Cthulhu.
Then who cares?
Because they can just use Cthulhu.
That's fine.
Oh, this is my favorite part. The man loved to write people. He that's how he talked to all of his friends, because he was like a recluse. He hated going outside of his house. He wrote over 100,000 letters.
Huh.
The dude liked to write.
The dude liked to write. His family was super wealthy up until his grandfather died. He then lived with his mother and reduced financial security until her institutionalization in 1919. Or 1819.
Institutionalization.
One
Did
of
you
those
write
two.
19 for all of these years?
I think it was 1919 for his mother.
Okay, I want to clarify.
Because he was born in 1890.
When you say
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want to clarify. When you say institutionalized.
No, she was in an insane asylum.
Okay, just making sure that that's what I understood.
His father was also institutionalized in 1893, where he died 5 years later. The cause of his death is commonly believed to be syphilis.
Did you know that 1893 is exactly 401 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue?
I did not, but now I do. That almost tracked. The mental health of his family affected him greatly. I'm sure you can tell that from his stories, where he pretty
we
much
sure that he
exclusively
didn't do it?
about
Are we sure he didn't do it?
Well, he
'Cause
was-
this seems all tied together very well.
I mean, he was a child at the time, but maybe.
It's like an Annie Wilkes kind of thing.
He escaped his troubles in his family's library by studying. He became a recluse who feared disease, change, and pretty much anything different.
I see.
A very short aside.
Like racial equality.
Oh, this is the short aside. He was very convinced for the longest amount of time that he was exclusively English, like he had like this pure bloodline heritage. And then he found out he had a Welsh ancestor, and it devastated him so much that that's when he wrote The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Oh my god. Get over yourself.
I am deluded in my bloodline from something else.
That influenced his writing a lot.
I mean, how many English people also have Welsh heritage? Jesus Christ.
While there was no indication that Lovecraft was particularly close to his grandmother, her death in 1896 had a profound effect to him. This is according to his own writings and his letters.
1896. All right.
Did it push her down the stairs?
He said it sent his family into a gloom which it never fully recovered.
That sounds like something he would say.
Yes. He was a very melodramatic man. More on that later.
Fair.
Lovecraft never sought higher education. He intended to go to university, but never actually did. He stopped at high school, which is super weird when you consider literally all of his characters are super highly educated scientists.
I have a point for that, but I'll bring it up later.
His mother used to talk about how ugly he was. This is one of the stories. This is something that wasn't like a one-time off event.
That's mean.
She did it all the time. Anytime someone would come over, she would talk about how unfortunate it was that her child was so ugly. And whenever someone would say, he just looks like a normal boy, she would look at him super sadly as if they didn't understand.
Because they didn't. Because there's nothing.
He internalized it so bad, and it caused so much self-hatred and other complexes that this is also reflected in his writing, like how ugly the characters in Shadow over Innsmouth were because of the Welsh blood.
I haven't read that one yet.
Well, you'll read it.
It's fine.
It's about diluted bloodlines.
Interesting. Okay.
Basically.
All right.
And this is one of those things that I think is really overlooked with Lovecraft, which is why I included it, is people these days really love to harp on his racism and his anti-Semitism, which you should harp on. I'm not saying you don't talk about that, but I'm saying that people never talk about the things that led up to that, including his mother constantly talking about how ugly he was throughout his entire childhood.
Yeah, like he's a scarred person.
Yeah.
Scarred people tend to make things more extreme.
Some of my personal theories on Lovecraft was that he was either asexual, because literally it never comes up in his works, and he didn't seem to like to have sex with his wife.
I mean, he said satisfactory.
Yeah.
HP, heavy penetration.
Perfectly satisfactory.
Perfectly satisfactory.
One of the YouTubers that I watch, the dude who did the Night Flyer review, In the Shadows or something.
In Praise of Shadows.
In Praise of Shadows. Great YouTuber, if you haven't seen him. He theorized that H.P. Lovecraft was actually transsexual because up until he was like 8 or 10 years old, he insisted he was a girl. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
I was going to say.
But I do think that there was some sort of complex in Lovecraft that isn't fully explored that influenced his own racism and his own perception of the world. I don't think that makes it okay, but I think it kind of explains where it originated from. And I think it started, I hate to invoke Freud here, it started with the mother.
I mean, when she calls you ugly all the time.
Continuously.
Yeah.
It was actually a big problem.
It'd be a big problem for me.
I brought this up. He was infamously known for his racism and anti-Semitic views. He was considered racist and anti-Semitic even for his time. He married a Jewish woman.
That's impressive.
But,
I mean, back then, I imagine that was thought of less harshly, I guess?
It was thought of less harshly. H.P. Lovecraft was a dude, and this is why I think he was, like, autistic or something on some sort of spectrum. He was the type of dude that would go to a sporting event, and when people would sing the national anthem, he would sing "God Save the Queen" over them.
That's kind of like when we used to go to high school, like prep rallies.
Yeah.
And then, because we always wear the Buccaneers.
Because
it was just like, let's go, Buccaneers. We'd be the ones in the back go, let's go. Oh, I can't say that because we're live.
Yeah.
Things. Okay.
He was known for his outrageous behavior and being difficult to deal with. Another favorite story of mine is he loved to take walks, right? He loved to take walks. But anytime someone would take a walk with him, he would find a way to direct their walk to an ice cream shop. Because he wanted to eat ice cream. He loved treats. He loved ice cream, candies. He was like a giant child in a lot of ways. In some ways, because he was a social recluse, and this is one of the reasons I relate to the guy, unfortunately, is he was stunted in a lot of ways. And because he died, I mean, maybe not young, but not old either. In his 40s.
46. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty young for a death.
I feel like even then that's still pretty young. I mean, people at least made it usually to their 50s.
He died before World War II.
Yeah.
And I think H.P. Lovecraft that would have lived through World War II might have ended up a very different person. Because he used to write letters praising Hitler. Yes, no, that's another thing.
Oh, no.
But then when World War II was getting closer to happening, he started writing letters like, maybe this guy ain't so great.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this whole killing Jews thing, probably not something that we should probably adopt.
I don't think he was a great person, but I do think he was a much more complex person than like modern dialogue lets him be.
It's almost like he himself is like a character that he even created himself.
So
yeah.
In summary, racism is bad.
Racism's super bad.
There's no excuse. However, people are more complicated than black and white.
Yeah, exactly. That's my opinion of H.P. Lovecraft. And I feel like we live in this like Twitter age dialogue where you either have to hate this man or love this man. And I think that really we should be somewhere in the middle where we try to understand where he came from.
Also, it is possible to hate the man and love the work. Hate the man and enjoy the work.
Yeah, I don't even hate the man. I hated a lot of the things that he said and that he did. But there's a lot of him that I also empathize with because I was a social recluse for a very long time. So
there's too many like classics that exist anymore. Where if you dig deep enough, you're gonna find skeletons in the closet.
And honestly, there are other predominant pop culture figures that have similar beliefs that are ignored. For instance, Walt Disney was a huge anti-Semite that nobody ever acknowledges.
Well, real quick, Hef, I want you to take out your phone and look up H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name.
And make sure you're by the mic when
Okay. Am I reading it?
No, you are not. Just Google what was H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name.
The reason I'm doing this is a few months ago Ryan made a meme that said H.P. Lovecraft is the most racist writer, and underneath it was like Kipling doing that like monkey look back and forth face.
I didn't make that, I just shared it.
Oh, okay. And so I responded in the comments, hey Ryan, why don't you look up H.P. Lovecraft's name? Because I think that settles who's more racist.
So I'm looking up H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name. Okay.
I wish I would have done that to both of you live, but I get to do it to somebody live.
Okay. H.P. Lovecraft's cat name, I am looking at it now. Oh my god.
He is a bad man.
He got the cat when he was 9, by the way.
You can be a talented writer and still be a bad man.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Is Owen Wilson in the studio? Wow.
So moving on.
I have no words.
Moving on from the cat. He wasn't featured in a prominent people of the area booklet at the time. I think it was like Prominent People of Providence thing.
With a cat name like that, I wouldn't include him either.
No, sir.
And this dealt such a huge blow to his ego that it sent him into a spiraling depression, and he died shortly after.
I like the idea that this man was called ugly for almost the entirety of his youth, and yet he developed an ego. I find the irony here awesome.
I think he was super complex because he hated himself and he hated his work, but at the same time he wanted recognized. Which I sort of understand as someone who constantly hates himself but also wants to be a writer. So, and here it is. To top it all off, when he died, his gravestone has "I am Providence" written on it. And that's like if Stephen King dies and writes "I am Maine" on his gravestone.
Wow.
Do you think he will?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, he's probably the most famous person from Maine.
It's frequently visited by fans. It's on my along with the Mothman Festival is on my short list of trips I want to do is to visit his grave.
I've been to
Stephen
Rhode
King's
Island
grave?
once.
No,
H.P. Lovecraft.
H.P.
I was
Lovecraft.
gonna say, did King die or whatever, and I'm just like now finding out about it?
No, me and Ryan would be doing like a whole eulogy
Oh,
episode.
we will. Yeah, that'll be a thing.
I will be sadder than whenever.
He has a new book coming out next month.
Oh crap!
Isn't he like 70 now?
70 something, yeah.
Yeah, I know he's
Jesus.
up there.
I'm
How old
now
is
reading
Stephen
Misery.
King? 74.
74. Jesus.
So
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
He released a book last year, and he has a new one coming out next
Thank
month.
God, I have a chance of catching up.
all right.
I'm on my fourth Stephen King book. I'm pretty stoked about that.
So we're now on the Call of Cthulhu. A little background on the story. It was written in 1926, published in the pulp magazine Weird Tales. Lovecraft was inspired to write the story by a dream he had, where he tries to sew a bas relief that he made in a museum meant for antiques. And he said this in the dream: "Why do you say this thing is new? The dreams of men are older than brooding Egypt, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon."
Girdle's a bra.
And this was fashioned in my dreams. And I'm like, that's such a complex quote for a dream. I've never said anything like that in a dream.
I literally woke up and was just like, that fucking dog ate me.
So he decided to expand on this dream by explaining the sculpt's nature. He took many inspirations to expand on the dream. He may have been inspired by a story known as the Kraken.
The Kraken.
The Kraken.
Kraken.
Release the Kraken.
Hello, hello, beastie.
Sidebar.
Yeah.
So I went to see Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, which is the second one, release week, with a couple mutual friends of Half and I's from high school.
Yeah.
I walked out of that movie saying, I mean, that's just basically Pirates of the Caribbean Empire Strikes Back. And a very good friend of ours screamed at me for 20 minutes after that. Why do you have to compare everything to Star Wars all the time? I'm like, okay, fair point. It's still Empire Strikes Back.
So I haven't read the Kraken.
Don't set up a trilogy if you're not going to set up a trilogy.
I know, right?
It's now on my short list because it's apparently inspired H.P. Lovecraft, and I want to see how much is in it. It was by Alfred Tennyson, who I never heard of before, and they both have sleeping monsters and ancient cities in the ocean. Fair enough. My closest thing to a Kraken story I have
So does Disney's Atlantis.
is when me, Ryan, and I think it was Kip went to see the new
It's an underrated movie.
Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans, and we said some not so kind words.
We didn't. Kip did.
Okay, so Kip did.
And then he died, so it's okay.
Sidebar: Atlantis is an underrated Disney movie.
It is a very underrated Disney movie. It took many inspirations to expand on his dream, the Kraken. Okay, so where are we at? D. Other stories are Arthur Mansions, I guess, is the dude's name.
Is that the guy who wrote The Great God Pan?
I don't... that should be on our short list. The Great God Pan is fantastic. The novel of the Black Sea, which uses the method of newspaper clippings to reveal the mystery.
Yes, he is the author of The Great God Pan.
The Great God Pan you would like. It's very...
I have read it.
Okay, it's Lovecraft minus the racism.
So better.
So, guy... I'm not even going to try to pronounce this dude's last name. Mossapatsis. The Hola in 1887.
Malpassants.
Yeah. It was... And then there's the story of Atlantis in 1896.
It literally translates to bad peasants.
Yeah.
The Lost Lemur.
Lemuria. Isn't that Superman?
I am King Julian.
Isn't that
I lost on Madagascar.
Mortys, please get these crazy animals away from me.
Isn't that Superman's girlfriend, Lemuria? Widely known that Lovecraft read these works shortly before he started to work on this story, so clear influences there. Some argue that he was inspired by War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I can see it.
Yeah. There's some similarities, but overall, I think there's more differences.
I'd say there's like some tangential relations. So Saint S.T. Joshi, who was a H.P. Lovecraft historian, also cited A. Meritus's novel, The Moonpool. The Moon Door is similar to the Cthulhu Door. I went over that. Okay, so I'm here. I am. Lovecraft himself did not actually care for this story. More than once, he referred to it as mediocre. It was initially rejected and only accepted when a friend of Lovecraft's, who was also a writer, I neglected to mention his name here, told the editor of Weird Tales that Lovecraft would submit elsewhere if he didn't accept the story. So they accepted the story out of fear of, if he submits it elsewhere, someone else is going to get the story. It's one of the most well-known and loved stories. Lovecraft himself used to humorously refer to his mythos as the Yog Sothothery.
Try that again, please.
Yog Sothothery.
That's Sothery?
Yeah. Yog Sothoth is one of the outer gods in his lore. It's like the outer god.
We're Googling it currently. How to pronounce
Yog Sothoth.
Doesn't help us whenever it's off.
Yog Sothoth.
Yog Sothoth.
Thanks.
Yog Sothoth.
Yeah. Yog Sothoth used to be like what was supposed to be the big, important thing in Lovecraft's lore. But because the story got so popular, I'm sure you guys have heard, this is now referred to as the Cthulhu Mythos because of this story.
Mm.
And, here it is. Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan the Barbarian, referred to this story as a masterpiece.
And Ron Howard, the creator of other stuff,
Han Solo, a Star Wars story.
He directed that. He did not create it. In fact, he was the second director.
He created Arrested Development.
Well, we're done.
We were done before this fucking thing started.
Oh god, I'm gonna butcher this party's name. French novelist
Michel Houellebecq.
In his book H.P. Lovecraft Against the World, Against Life, describes the story as Lovecraft's first great text.
We're 46 minutes into this podcast.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna have to edit so much, it's gonna be terrible.
Despite being known as a mythos, most of his works are surprisingly self-contained. You don't have to read one story to understand other stories, is what is meant by that.
Okay.
And it has served as a major inspiration for films and pop culture. Some examples are the Call of Cthulhu tabletop RPG, the film Cthulhu, which is loosely based on the Shadows over Innsmouth, various video games such as Bloodborne, and South Park. Cthulhu, much like Dracula, has passed its origins. Structure and themes. It's presented as the final notes of Francis Wayland Thurston.
I have something to say.
Yes, you do.
I think that it's interesting that the story is in first person, but H.P. Lovecraft finds a way to create a first-person story where the fate of the narrator is uncertain.
Yes. Yes, that's actually one of its strengths. It's broken into three parts. The Horror in Clay. In the Horror in Clay, we have Francis Wayland Thurston. Everyone has these really long, great names. Says how death and the chance of viewing of a newspaper article led him to this horrific realization. He describes how he came across his great uncle's George Gamel Angel, his lockbox, and
Professor
Professor
Gamel Angel.
Professor
The 12th.
of linguistics. So it's like being a professor of anthropology. Who the fuck cares?
Ooh.
That's a field I considered.
He comes across his lockbox, and from it he finds a manuscript for Cthulhu Cult. He describes his uncle's interaction with a Henry Anthony Wilcox, and the bas relief he created while he was dreaming, and the dreams the artist had that came after a great storm.
You have been waiting a long goddamn time to talk about this, haven't you?
Yes.
Guys, look in Abra.
Catch the Abra. The second part is the tale of Inspector Legrassi. Describes why George is so intent on getting information from Wilcox. Ryan's here playing Pokemon.
He ran away. Oh wait, there's a Team Rocket balloon.
He teleported out. He's like, nah, bitch.
Abras are hard to catch.
They are.
Is Jessie pregnant?
They were hard in the first fucking game. You couldn't hardly get them anyway.
Where are we?
Okay, so we're on the tale of Inspector Legrassi. Describes why George is so intent on getting information from Wilcox. It takes place in 1908.
He's so intent on getting Wilcox.
So it takes place decades prior to the first part. It was interrupted with questions from John Raymond Legrassi. I'm sure I'm like butchering that.
I think Hef is right. I think it's Legrasse. He's the inspector from New Orleans. I'm sorry, New Orleans.
New Orleans. It concerned an idol he found in the hands of a cult. Professor William Channing Webb is the only person with helpful information who describes his experiences with devil-worshipping Eskimos. Which is why we are currently building a staff.
A combination I wouldn't have thought of, but I'm glad that there's a demographic.
Well, I mean, they weren't actual devil worshippers. They worshipped Cthulhu, but in this guy's interpretation, they were devil worshippers.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So in this part, Legrassi recounts his experience with the cult in 1907. So this is where you start to get a feeling with everything's going back further and you're getting like bits and pieces of the puzzle. And then the third part is the madness from the sea, which Francis by chance sees a newspaper article that leads him to attempt to track down Gustav Johansson and the boats Irma and the pirate ship Alert.
Isn't it Emma?
It might be Emma. Did I write down Irma?
It says Irma.
I think it's Emma in the book. Yeah, that's a typo.
I remember thinking it was Emma.
Yeah, no, that's a typo.
The Madness from the Sea is my pet name for the Little Mermaid too.
And he tracks down the final writings of Johansson, which he writes in English to keep secret from his wife. And this is where the final horrors of
horrors. Take your shirt off.
Okay. So there's a lot. There's only like really two major themes that I could come across, and that is the price of knowledge. Will science eventually drive us mad? Which Lovecraft very much thought it would. And cosmicism, which is human insignificance.
So, thoughts on will science eventually drive us mad? That was one of the first things stated in the beginning of the book, or the short story. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And I thought that the themes were going to be like, will technology, the quick advancement of technology drive us mad? But it didn't turn out to be that so much. It was like the actual, just like general knowledge of this one specific thing, Cthulhu.
For me, it was, is there stuff in the past that we could dig up that would drive us mad? Is there like, and when you think about Lovecraft and even his history, are there things in our history that will affect us? Such as finding out H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name.
on a more substantial level,
yeah,
Somebody tried to log into our OnlyFans account.
They tried to log in?
Yeah, that was you.
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Well, Lovecraft did write a short story about cold air driving people mad because air conditioners became a thing and he was afraid of them.
Much like Chinese water torture, like you just you have that same monotonous thing happen over and it drives you fucking nuts.
Hot take. I like air conditioning.
I also like
Hot take.
I think Lovecraft was wrong on this one.
Fun fact, less than 5% of English households have air conditioners. Less than 5.
No, I listened to a European magic podcast, and the host is from Germany, and he was actually talking on it about how they don't use air conditioning in Germany, and how when he visited the United States, he learned that air conditioning is a very good thing.
Yeah.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Okay, so I guess we're on characters now.
And just a general note on characters here.
There is.
They
have the depth of a petri dish.
People in Lovecraft stories are usually not actual characters. They're pieces of a puzzle to the narrative or to the mystery that's going on.
Like Stan Urin.
But I do have a thing about this.
Okay, I will listen to your thing.
Fair enough. So, as a person who has read at least 2 Lovecraft tales, the first one being At the Mountains of Madness, the second one being this one.
Yeah.
I found this gentleman to be much more palatable.
This dude, and the way he writes and talks about himself, yeah.
For 2 reasons. The biggest reason being that, unlike the gentleman who was in At the Mountains of Madness, he is not what you would consider to be an expert in the field.
No.
He doesn't do, kind of the real descriptive narrative that the guy in the Mountains of Madness does. Because the idea of the Mountains of Madness was, it's a scientist that is speaking to his peers.
Yeah.
This guy is not that.
No.
Which makes it a lot more, to me, as a first-time Lovecraftian reader, very palatable.
Yeah.
It makes the story easier to follow. It makes the general story that he's trying to encompass much easier to obtain in your own mind.
The thing about Francis, and he's about the only person I could say has actual character, and the reason is he admits he's materialistic. He's doing this because he thinks there's profit in becoming a well-known anthropologist by stealing his dead uncle's work. There's actual character motivation in that. He thinks Wilcox, the artist, is either lying or deluded. He's super skeptical up until the very end when all the puzzle pieces fall together. As far as a Lovecraft character goes, he is the closest to being an actual person.
I agree with that.
Everyone else in the story, not so much.
Everybody else is just they're a catalyst.
And he is the narrator.
Yeah. There's one more character that I think comes close to being an actual character, but we're not on him yet.
Okay.
I'd like to be on him.
He's so we already went over a lot of this. He's the nephew who embarks to discover his uncle's obsession with the Cthulhu cult. Myths is purely material. He's the resident skeptic until coincidences lead him to the same conclusion as everyone else. He is a fairly typical. He's a fairly typical Lovecraft protagonist, but I think he's one of the better written ones because of the reasons you mentioned.
George Gamble, Angel, Professor George Gamble.
Good news, everyone!
I was just about to do this.
That's kind of funny because this leads me to how I think he is a typical Lovecraft protagonist, which he is a sexless intellectual whose sanity is eroded over time because of forbidden truths.
A sexless intellectual.
That's every Lovecraft character.
Meaning asexual, not genderless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a tree.
Yeah, he doesn't...
Okay.
These people don't care about... characters in Lovecraft stories don't care about human relationships or romance.
Is Thrawn sexless?
So, they don't like...
Kinda.
You're telling me there's people in fiction that don't like thick bitches?
I think...
How dare they?
The thickest bitch in the story is Cthulhu himself. More on that later.
Ooh.
I'm going to redo all my usernames to be Thrawn's Pawn.
The next character is George Gamel Angel. He's the great uncle to Francis, who dies mysteriously after being jolted by a what, Ryan?
What are we talking about?
Who kills George in...
The Cthulhu cult. Oh, a nautical Negro.
Yes, thank you. The alliteration. Thank you, Ryan. His life is largely compiled with information on the Cthulhu cult. He's Professor Emeritus of Semitic language in like so many people before George becomes obsessed with coincidences and learning the truth.
All right, early homework. Which Hangover movie do you think H.P. Lovecraft would prefer?
I've only seen the first.
They're all pretty much the same, but...
Okay, so the first.
I say the second.
Because of the
giraffe.
Oh, no, that's the third one.
Is it the third one? Whichever one has the giraffe in it.
Hold on.
I swear that.
Pause.
I swear that was the second one.
No, it's the third one.
Okay.
Please hold while the guys look this up on YouTube.
It took them 3 movies to get the worst joke, and you didn't think you were ready for it, and you weren't. And it still happens.
Okay, give me a minute to compose myself. We are on Henry Anthony Wilcox.
The art student.
Yes. The artist who leads George to start corresponding with other artists. He forms a bas relief of Cthulhu in his sleep. He is a lanky recluse plagued by bad dreams, described physically as hypersensitive. I really feel like this is the Lovecraft stand-in. I feel like this is supposed to be Lovecraft himself in the story.
As Ben Mears, or Bill Denbrough, is the Stephen King stand-in.
Yes, sir.
I have noticed in my readings of King that there are quite a few authors in his stories.
Yeah.
Or the Paul Sheldon.
Yeah, so I'm reading Misery right now. I just finished Salem's Lot, and Ben was an author.
I also just finished Salem's Lot.
A lot of his books have authors.
Okay.
If not as the main character or somewhere.
I cheated on eBay and got like 12 of his books for like $20. So
Still not a bad deal.
I'm sitting on $20 worth of paperback novels that I have to get through now.
Inspector John Raymond Lagrasse. He's an investigator who brings an idol for scientists to analyze at a conference for anthropology. His story is the first of Cthulhu that George hears, and he hears it in 1908. Lagrasse's story takes place in 1907, and the story proper takes place in like 1925, I think.
Yes.
And
or the incident in like March to April.
Yeah.
That the period of dreams takes place in 1925.
Yeah. So it's always about going back and finding new pieces of the puzzle. It's a lot like anthropology in that context. Lagrasse used a police force to stop cult activities, but he extracted very little information. Snitches get stitches.
That's what Cthulhu emphasizes.
Yeah.
Speaking of snitches, the International Quidditch Association has decided to change their name from Quidditch to Quadball to distance themselves from J.K. Rowling.
I don't think that's gonna work, but okay.
I understand politically why you would want to do that, but just in terms of brand recognition,
it's like changing your name from Cthulhu to Squid Games.
Exactly.
To get away from H.P. Lovecraft.
Or from Cthulhu to Squidward.
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
Professor William Channing Webb. I love everyone's middle names in this story.
They like gotta emphasize.
They all have like
names.
a big middle name.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of The Big Bang Theory is when Penny's dating this real dumb guy, and he
Zach.
And
I love Zach.
He makes this comment about starfish, and Sheldon says, "Was that starfish wearing boxer shorts? Because you may have been watching Nickelodeon."
I think this is going to be super funny because I wanted to spring this on you guys suddenly.
Oh, no.
William Channing Webb, along with Lagrasse, they are the ones who are able to decipher a phrase by working together. How would you guys say this?
Show me.
Right there.
Okay, I can do this.
Okay.
Niglu, Mglu, Nafu, Cthulhu, Relay, Wuga, Negel, Fugtagnen.
Okay. How would you pronounce this, F?
I'm gonna need to read that.
Yeah, come on in. Get close.
Let's see. Alright.
Tip top fondue.
Zanuglu, Migluf Nafnufu, Cthulhu, Releo, Winga, Nigel Larson.
You said a little Klingonish.
That wasn't bad. I like that.
It's all about the guttural response.
And this roughly translates to, in his house at Relay, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
But is Cthulhu dead at Relay? I don't think so.
Yes.
He is?
Yeah. The story specifically says that they are both dead and not dead at the same time when the stars are not right.
Seems like he wasn't dead when he was chasing that dude.
Because the stars became right briefly.
When you're a cosmic being, everything makes sense.
I am the eater of worlds.
Kinda,
This is a guy who could literally...
This is like the prelude to Pennywise.
This is a guy who could go to a scratch and sniff and taste it.
One of the last quote-unquote characters that are puzzle pieces is Gustav Johansson, the second mate of the Emma. His story is that of the finding of Relay and its horrors that lie within. He fights off pirates and is driven by a sense of unknown duty to kill them. You could say the same about his ramming his boat into Cthulhu. Major spoilers. Much like George, he mysteriously dies after being jostled by seamen.
What? Repeat that?
He was jostled by seamen.
He was jolted by seamen.
My submarine is a long hard rod full of seamen.
Like Daniel's woman being jostled by seamen, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so this is one I actually kind of want to talk about. The last character, who I also feel is the only other actual character in the story, which is fucking Cthulhu.
Okay.
We learned a lot about Cthulhu, not from Cthulhu himself, but from his cultist. He is a alien being that doesn't really exist as we understand him. He's not really made of matter as we know it. His morality stretches beyond normal good and evil
like conceptions.
Very much, yeah. Donald Trump is Cthulhu.
His hair moves independently of himself, so I mean,
as
I feel
does
like
the tentacles,
works.
yes.
The Orange Man. Russell, we're talking about the Orange Man.
Cthulhu Man bad. So, Cthulhu you get a lot about with actually very little.
Less is more.
Yeah. You learn that it, for some reason, wants human sacrifice. It doesn't view human beings as necessarily as existing on the same level, but it still requires them to worship it in some capacity. I think that these things are kind of super interesting. The worship of it leads to madness. It's described as a dragon, an octopus, and a man at the same time. It's not made of matter as we know it, and it can be dead and alive at the same time. And several of the statuettes in the story are described as chubby, or as I like to say, thick. Dead bod.
I'll kill you all. I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all. I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Where are we at? Scary shit?
Scary shit.
I'll be your worst nightmare. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
I can't wait for him to add that and then forget to edit that part out.
It's actually just him deep-throating into the microphone.
I thought the scare factor on this book was pretty low. Tell me why I'm wrong.
It depends on what you find scary. If you find, like, the existential idea that your life is completely insignificant in the grand scheme of the cosmos scary, which is something that Lovecraft himself found scary, this is sort of scary. It's saying that there are things that exist so far beyond human evolution that you might as well be an ant.
Like high ground limeade beer.
Yes. Like high ground limeade beer. There's human sacrifice. There's strange cults. If you find human sacrifice scary.
You know what was scary about this book? You could be just a group of guys on a Friday evening having a violent sex orgy in the bayou, and the cops could just come break it up at any time.
Here's why I don't understand something that I thought you would find scary. Is Cthulhu is literally a giant that picks people up in its paws and eats them alive.
Yes. Yeah. That part was kind of scary.
Because you are notoriously known for being scared of giants.
So, little difference. I do think giants that resemble humans
are scarier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas Cthulhu is kind of a giant monster.
It's a squid Godzilla.
But I did think that was one of the scarier parts of the book.
And where it just snatched up the semen.
Snatch the semen.
That was clever.
Thank you. I tried.
It was very intricately woven.
I tried super hard.
That's what she said.
This is probably just scary to me. I don't know about you two. Non-Euclidean geometry, where something can be slanted and horizontal at the same time, up and down at the same time.
You know what did get me?
What?
What's his name? Hold on. Johansson.
Yeah.
He was saved by an acute angle that acted like an obtuse angle.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
For some reason, the concept of non-Euclidean geometry freaks me the fuck out. Like, things that can exist two ways at once.
It's kind of like going into, like, a circus and then being in, like, the mirror room.
Yeah.
Like, you know that's not what you're looking at.
Or one of those spinny rooms where you feel like you're spinning.
As far as scare factor for me?
Yeah, for Hef. What is your scare factor?
Okay. It was kind of intimidating, the idea that, like, there is this other world beings that exist so separate from us that when we do recognize that they exist, we can't comprehend they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is it is scary in and of itself, because, like, you as a human being, like, you know, we're the top of the food chain. There is nothing greater. So even those of us who believe in a higher power, like God or whatnot, we still kind of imagine it in our image.
Yeah, we're still at least a second down.
Yeah, we're still imagining them as, like, maybe a superior being, but they're still a being that's formed from, like, we are still formed from what it would be.
We're still supposed to at least look like it.
So this creature, or this entity, that basically defies all logic. It defies physics.
Yeah.
It defies appearance. It defies every single thing that we have been taught from any sort of Catholicism or any sort of great religion that has gone all the way back to the days before we even had a written verbiage to be able to describe this. And the idea that you see something like this, or even in our narrator's case, he never sees it.
Yeah.
He just
reads about it.
He just reads about it. Yeah, and the idea that just the thought of something of that grandiose nature is enough to just shatter your mind to the point where
he's so scared.
You go to sleep and you just wonder if you're going to wake up tomorrow morning.
He's so scared that maybe it's real that he's like, just burn my notes if you find them.
Right. And that to me, I think it's a conceptual horror. But I like stuff like that. Stuff that really kind of like put you just on a little bit more of an elevated thought process of just being able to be like, I'm down here typically.
Yeah.
But now, because I know what I know, I now have to fear up here now.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool concept to me. So maybe not scary.
Yeah.
But certainly fascinating.
Ryan touched on this earlier.
I did?
Yeah.
He looks so surprised.
I'm going to really bring this up.
I had a good thought.
A thought Ryan had when he was slightly more sober was that this is a story where a first-person perspective story where you don't know the fate of the person who wrote it. And that's because it's the last writings of the man.
I don't believe you that I said that.
And
it's like, was it, oh shit, what's that movie?
Flintstones Viva Rock.
I don't know what you're referencing.
Fear and Loathing.
Yeah.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Because, like, he dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. Like, it's like you're told from a first-person perspective what's happening.
Only we don't know if he dies. We just know that these are the last things he's written.
Right.
And it's supposed to be, we found these writings.
They're journal entries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're about writings he found and the consequences of the people who found the writings before. So it's a cycle, and the story is written from a perspective of you are now part of the cycle. And that's why this is one of the few first-person narrative stories that still kind of works because it pulls you into the narrative itself.
That's how Amnesia works as I'm playing it. Like, as I'm playing it, I'm realizing more and more that story is entirely journal entries.
100%. I love your Let's Play, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I've listened to every episode on my drives to and from work.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, continue.
Ryan, in your last small bits of soberness, do you have any scary shit to add before we move on?
No.
Okay. Ryan didn't appear to find this story particularly scary, and that's fine.
I found it like very much elevated than what I typically read, which I'll get to in a minute.
Kiss me, fat boy.
We're moving on to Kiss Me, Fat Boy.
Ryan, I'm going to let you take this one. Oh, no, I should take this one because I literally wrote this.
You wrote the entire outline.
That is not something I'm used to. I firmly believe that Lovecraft was a sexless being. Maybe that's a hot take, maybe it's not. I think that this was a dude who either didn't like sex very much or didn't know how to talk about it. Because it doesn't appear in any of his works.
Take my phone away and we're going to get us banned from Grubhub too.
His characters are almost all asexual in terms of the narrative. Like, you can't really...
You can't fucking antagonize the Grubhub guy.
The closest thing we get to sex mentioned in this story is the half-breed mongrels that Lovecraft goes on about.
I'll give you this back.
No. He doesn't get his back.
Okay.
And this story really doesn't dwell on sex at all.
See, that's my argument. Like,
Kiss me, fat boy.
I shouldn't say argument. It's just like that's not what the story's about.
Yeah.
Like, the entire story is based around journal entries of people that are left behind, specifically to discourage anybody from coming in. So to add sex into it just seems like, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
All right, Brian, you can run over Dean Koontz. And we're moving on.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
Two kings and Koontz, and we're kicking off with Mr. Hef.
Oh, okay.
What is your king and what is your Koontz?
Okay, I'm going to attempt to be conscious of thought while I'm reading this. So, my king is that it is utterly unique. Being that this is my first dive into really Lovecraft stuff, it really is kind of unlike anything else you read. There is no real, like, even stuff that's like a homage to it.
Yeah.
It's still a homage.
Yeah, it's still not the same.
It's just not the same. So, really, if you're looking for something that's of a Lovecraftian kind of vibe, without being Lovecraft, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, you surely should just jump into Lovecraft. The biggest king that I can give is that if you are trying to get into Lovecraft for the first time, this is one of, if not the best story to read.
This is so good for a first one.
For two reasons I can give you. The first one is there's such a broad spectrum of fandom behind it. You could literally just read this story and then go to, like, Reddit or any of these other websites or anything like these where people maybe not publish works but write their own stories just on the fandom behind Cthulhu itself. So you don't even have to read if Lovecraft is not what you're into, there are plenty of people that don't write the same way Lovecraft did but still use the same general archetype, which makes it so much more fun to me. Like, Cthulhu itself is an entity that is meant to be enjoyed and played with.
Yeah.
And just expanded upon. So to me, this is one of, if not the most definitive story of Lovecraft to read. He just fucking dumped that whole goddamn thing onto his chest.
And on that, Lovecraft wanted people to write in his universe.
Right.
This isn't like people taking his work and, like, bastardizing it half the time. This is a dude who wanted people to take his characters and his concepts and go, no, you've run with it. I want to see what you do.
And the other thing I would like as far as, like, the king is just the idea that something's so terrifying that it breaks the human psyche.
Yeah.
That's just very impressive.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. My Koontz is probably... it's going to be probably hot. If anybody listens, it's going to be hotly debated.
Yes, sir.
My Koontz
will also be hotly debated.
Lovecraft is not introductory reading. Period. His descriptions of everything is so in-depth to the point where it becomes very boring for some people. Myself included. Now, the Call of Cthulhu worked out pretty well because it's fairly short. It's like 30 pages. So you have just enough description and storytelling to be able to build the mythos, but not actually get bored with it. What I'm referring to is other works that are a little bit longer. For instance, I'm going to try to avoid talking about it too much in case this is covered somewhere down the line.
Yeah. But
like at the Mountains of Madness. So at the Mountains of Madness, it's about a 100-page story, but because of all the description that goes into it, like he describes everything to such a strict efficiency that it's really hard to be able to ascertain that. For instance, when I was reading at the Mountains of Madness, when he was describing the cephalopods, I had a real hard time understanding what he was describing.
Like what the words he was using.
Because he was so descriptive. I had to pull out a thesaurus in addition to looking it up online.
Yeah.
Because what he was describing was so succinct that me as not a real strong reader, I had a hard time with it.
Yeah.
So to me, Lovecraft is one of those things where it's kind of like, for those of you who are nerds in the audience, it's kind of like if you jumped into Magic the Gathering and said, I'm going to play Legacy. There's a very high barrier to wherever you have to actually get over that point to be able to play Legacy. Once you get there, it's great.
Yes.
But there's still that mountain you have to climb to get there, which in Legacy, Magic the Gathering, it's the price point. With Lovecraft, it's the verbiage. The verbiage is, if you're not a well-read person, it's rough. And that's really my biggest Koontz about it, is that if you're wanting to try Lovecraft, it can be intimidating. But if you're going to do it, Cthulhu is your best one. Because I think it's about as introductory as you can get with him.
I can agree with that. Okay, so my king is, I think that this short story is extremely quotable. And I will lead with that with, we live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. And I will end with, let me find my spot here. Let me pray that if I do not survive this manuscript, my executors may put caution before audacity and see it meets no other eye. I think that this story is filled with little quotes like that. That if this ever did have a adaptation, you could just put that shit in the trailer and it would sell itself. Koontz is, upon rereading this for the 5th time, I have to admit that if you are sensitive to topics such as racism, that there are some put-offs to the story. And I can't deny that. I can't defend it. I'm a huge Lovecraft apologist. But if those are things that are deal breakers for you, you can't read this.
Yeah.
If you can't deal with the term nautical Negro, you cannot deal with this story, and I can't blame you for it. And that's
it's cool.
That's my Koontz.
Not the racism. Like if you can't read it because of the racism,
then
that's cool.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. I think that there are plenty of other like Lovecraft inspired works that you could get into if you for some reason can't get into that kind of language.
Like there's so many fan things that people write that you can totally get into the world itself without having to delve in. Like, and I know it seems offensive maybe even to like not take from the master himself who created the thing.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, sometimes stuff just doesn't age well.
Yeah. It's just a fact of what the time.
It's just age. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's my Koontz.
He's racist as fuck.
We're on your King and Koontz, Ryan. Let's hear your drunk ramblings.
DJ Jazzy Jeff here. Uncle Phil throw me out the house. Okay.
Same shirt.
Same shirt. Yo, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that show slaps, yo. Okay. My king and my Koontz for the Call of Cthulhu are the same thing. Because it's both good and bad. I feel like this was my first time reading H.P. Lovecraft ever. And I feel like I was just like dropped into the Silmarillion with like no background knowledge at all. And if you're going to read the Silmarillion, you got to read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Ring first, yo. If you just read the Silmarillion or just some random story out of the Silmarillion, you're not going to know what those shit is going on. You might appreciate the lore and the awesomeness of it. But for me, I loved this, like, oh man, this is like this huge like world building lore shit that I've never experienced, and I finally get to like learn about all these elder gods and all this Cthulhu shit and all this stuff, and it's so cool, and I've never experienced this, and it's like diving into this franchise for the first time, and it's so cool. But at the same time, I was like, fuck, this story is just not accessible, yo. It's like, if you don't know anything about this Lovecraft guy and you like jump into the story, it's just like, what the fuck is going on with this wrinkly ass white ass racist, yo?
Your entire Koontz.
That was Ryan.
So succinct.
I'm now holding the microphone as if I'm a stand-up comedian. We're on Zombie Day, which is sort of our
Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's our Easter eggs.
Because I call Easter Zombie Day.
Holy shit! I just now put that together.
Yeah.
Oh man.
There were two that I was able to definitively confirm. The black winged things that were in the swamp are largely thought to be the Biyaki, which were first...
Bukaki? What?
The Biyaki.
Oh.
Not Bukaki.
I'm sorry.
That would be a lot more fun than Lovecraft. They were first found in the story The Festival, which was published in January of 1925, a year before Call of Cthulhu. And also the Necronomicon and the Mad Arab Abdul Alizad are also referenced, and he was first referenced in The Hound in 1924, which was written in 1922.
Is that related to the Hound of the Baskervilles?
Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so we're on homework, and I actually kind of like this homework. Okay, so you guys unlock a lockbox. You find Francis Wayland's notes. Do you put caution before audacity and burn his notes? Or do you begin your own investigation?
Investigate. Go for it.
Right, Ryan investigates.
No, I don't.
You burn?
I burn.
I also investigate. I sadly am too obsessed with little concepts like this.
Look how loud the cinema.
Ryan and I get ourselves killed. Hef gets to live.
Why do you explore? Why do you delve deeper?
Because we are human, and to question is too human.
Do you want my actual answer?
Yes.
Because on my bucket list is to experience something truly supernatural that I can't explain.
Same.
And if I get even the hint of a whiff that I might be on the trail of something, I'm going for it. Even if it kills me.
And why would you not?
Why would I not?
Because you don't want to die.
Well, other than death being the assuredness. I am a person who is... I live with a bunch of women that
Oh yeah.
I live with a bunch of women that are very superstitious.
Yeah.
They are superstitious so much to the point that they have sworn up and down that I'm the one that needs to go downstairs for things because they think something's down there. Now, half of me thinks they're just fucking with me to make me do laundry, but it's been a long time that they've done that. I am not superstitious in any way, shape, or form. However, it should be noted, there are just some things in heaven and earth, regardless of whether you are atheist, Catholic, religious, whatever you want to be, there's just some things you just don't fuck with. And I think this would be one of those things.
This is your line.
If you were to read this to me and tell me that this thing,
like you have all the evidence in the lockbox,
as far as your knowledge, this thing is real, this exists, you now have to deal with that. My ideal goal would be to never interact with this entity.
You'd burn the notes.
For the rest of my life. And I would burn the notes to the point where I am the only one that has to know about this, and I would never speak a word to it to anyone.
Okay, that's fair.
I would maybe be miserable throughout the rest of my life, but it dies with me.
It dies with it. The Call of Cthulhu dies with Hef.
Yes.
Me and Ryan die.
I would die so quick. Okay, and our question for the listeners tonight is the same thing. Would you put caution before audacity upon finding these papers? Would you investigate, or would you back off? Would you do the Daniel, or would you do the Hef? Please let us know. Reach out to us on our social medias.
Those are verbs now.
Do the Daniel.
I'm going to Daniel this up.
All right, further reading. If you liked the Call of Cthulhu, what else should you read?
Okay, there is The Shadow over Innsmouth. There's The Dunwich Horror at the Mountains of Madness, a large portion of Lovecraft's library, really. A lot of them are super similar. They have a lot of similar themes, and they're kind of written similarly. I think Lovecraft is a lot easier to read than some of these. I think Shadow over Innsmouth would be the second one I would have you jump into.
I called the Uber guy Senpai.
Stephen King's It, especially the interludes. I think the interludes were 100% inspired.
You fucking did. It just sent.
The interludes were 100% inspired by Lovecraft. I think Hef is the only person here who's also obsessed with Bloodborne.
Yes.
I like it, but it's too hard. Keep going out of
like if you were to give me a top 5 list of video games I've played in the last 10 years, Bloodborne would be on it.
It's my number one PS4 game.
Oh, it's not even questioned as far as PS4 game. Yes.
I think 100%. It's also super Lovecraftian. And then you have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I think that's the closest he gets to being H.P. Lovecraft and not Stephen King. Do you have any further readings you would like to add?
As far as readings, not a whole lot. Mainly just because it's the first time I've experienced Lovecraft. Lovecraft, as I said with my King,
yeah,
the whole point of like my King was that it's so unique to him that it's really hard to justify anything else once you've dove in. I think the best thing you can do for yourself is read the Call of Cthulhu first as an independent story.
Yeah, I think it works really well.
If you read it as an independent story, it opens up so many fan horizons. And those of you who are really into fan fictions, there's so many people out there that are with you on it. Like, dive whole hog in. Then in addition, I think it's tough to say any recommendations because there really isn't a whole lot that, like, you can say it's Lovecraft-esque.
Yeah.
But it's not Lovecraft.
I have one more, but it's only for like a super specific thing. If you're like me and you super love journal entries or like notes as a form of storytelling, Dracula. Because it's also told from notes and stories and newspaper clippings.
And as I said earlier, if you don't read and you're more like try to, like with me, like some immersion works a little bit better, try Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
That's
the entire
very good.
The entire story is told entirely through journal entries that you just pick up as you go through the game,
which you can watch at youtube.com/lonelylittleboyprod.
All right, Ryan, tell us what's upcoming on The Horror of Babylon.
So please check out our gaming content on our YouTube page. You can watch playthroughs of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Missed Messages, Doki Doki Literature Club, and what's that game we played tonight?
Oh, Project Cat.
Project Cat. That was fun. I enjoyed it. So you can catch playthroughs of that. Next week on Sunday, August 14th, we are reviewing the Call of Cthulhu 2005, the film adaptation from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. The following Sunday, August 21st, we are doing our next book episode on the short story The Phantom Rickshaw by Rudyard Kipling, where we will be comparing who is the bigger racist, H.P. Lovecraft or Rudyard Kipling. Spoiler alert, it's H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, look up his cat's name. Lovecraft wins.
Our next episode, the last Sunday in August, will be on Call Girl of Cthulhu, the 2014 film.
Film quotations.
Our next episode
Super stoked to watch that, actually.
First Sunday in September 4th, we will be reviewing Junji Ito's Gyo, and we're going to cover the anime adaptation on Sunday, September 11th. Our next novel will be on Sunday, September 18th, Stephen Graham Jones' The Only Good Indian, which is probably the most modern novel we've reviewed so far. It was just released a couple years ago. And then the last Sunday in September, we're going to cover the first anime adaptation of Mermaid Saga, Mermaid Force, from 1991. And that's what we have upcoming on the Horror of Babylon.
This is the most sober he sounded all evening.
I'm still stuck on the fact that he said Lonely Little Boy Prod.
Productions is shortened, PROD.
I know, but it sounds so sexual.
I want to prod you, Senpai.
Yeah, Lonely Little Boy
Oh, by
Prod.
the way, keep this phone away from him.
Oh, we're still doing that? Okay.
Yeah. Until the food gets here, I want the food.
Alright.
I don't know if I should apologize or applaud our efforts. This is either going to be our best episode or our worst episode.
I think it's a little column A and a little column B. I think the good in this episode is fantastic. I think the drunken ramblings are kind of funny, so...
All right, well, it is what it is. Thank you, Senpai. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Hef. And stay scary, everybody.
Stay scary, everybody. We love you.
Stay scary, peeps.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. Follow Daniel at dstarsick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. And finally, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, TuneIn and the iHeartRadio app. Stay scary.